Of welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for a pretty thorough exploration of the machinery that makes us move, the human muscular system.
Yeah, we're going deep today.
Definitely. We want to go far beyond, the superficial stuff you might find in a basic workout guide. We're digging into the microscopic biology, the complex physics of how force is generated, and actually the surprisingly logical language used to label all these tissues.
Right.
By the end of this deep dive, you should have a really fundamental, solid understanding of how your body translates, well, conscious thought and chemical energy into actual observable action.
And understanding that translation is so crucial because really muscles are the ultimate organizers and workhorses of our biological system. We often just think, okay, muscles mean large-scale voluntary movement, walking, running, throwing something.
Sure, the obvious stuff.
But their function really extends into, well, every corner of human existence. They're the engines driving those critical, constant background processes that keep you alive.
Look, what specifically?
Well, the rhythm of your heart, obviously, the complex mechanics of breathing, even the tiny adjustments to your posture that you don't even think about. And the whole churning process of digestion, it's all muscle.
It's quite a compelling image, isn't it? The sources really make it clear that without that constant tension, that ability to contract, the human form just loses its integrity.
Yeah.
We'd be reduced, as one source kind of cleverly put it, to jello blobs in skeleton suits, which is memorable.
It paints a picture. Muscles provide that kinetic energy needed not just for survival, but for, sophisticated interaction with our environment.
So to really cement this picture for you listening, imagine yourself not as like a static statue, but as a really sophisticated three-dimensional puppet.
That's a good analogy.
The bones provide the rigid levers, the structure, right? But the muscles are these incredibly precise, interconnected strings.
And they do more than just pull.
Exactly. They stabilize, they can push effectively by controlling relaxation, they brace. They ensure that every single move, from just a simple blink to running a marathon, is coordinated and controlled.
It's intricate.
So our mission today is pretty comprehensive. We want to cut through the noise, give you the essential knowledge nuggets. We need to clearly distinguish between the basic muscle classes, get a handle on the molecular process of contraction, which is frankly mind-bending stuff.
It really is.
And maybe most practically, learn the sort of definitive code for decoding those anatomical muscle names. So let's start at the beginning. What are the three distinct tissues that actually make up the muscular system?
Okay, so the human body uses three distinct classes of muscle tissue, and the key differences really come down to structure, location, and crucially, the level of conscious control we have over them.
Right. Let's start with the one most people know best, skeletal muscle.
Skeletal muscles are basically our intentional movers. They're under voluntary control, meaning they're governed by the somatic nervous system. You choose to activate them.
You decide to move your arm, it moves.
Exactly. Structurally, they're characterized by their striated or striped appearance under a microscope. And this striation is really important because it indicates these highly organized internal structures that are optimized for rapid, powerful contraction.
Okay.
Their job is locomotion. They attach, either directly or indirectly, to bones, allowing you to move your skeleton around.
So these are the muscles we use to, express ourselves physically, whether we're lifting something heavy or just giving a thumbs up. They follow direct commands from the brain.
Precisely. Then the second type is cardiac muscle, and its location is pretty much its definition. It's found exclusively in the heart.
That makes sense. The name is the easiest memory cue there. Cardio always means heart, right?
Absolutely. And interestingly, cardiac muscle actually shares that striated appearance with skeletal muscle. So it indicates a similar high degree of internal organization.
But functionally, totally different.
Completely different, because it operates under involuntary autonomic control. You don't consciously tell your heart to beat, it just does.
Thank goodness.
Right. This muscle is remarkable for its endurance, its relentless nature. It contracts automatically, rhythmically, 24 hours a day, just keeping that circulatory system going.
Okay, so we have voluntary skeletal, involuntary cardiac, and then the third, often overlooked class, smooth muscle.
Smooth muscle earns its name because, unlike the other two, it's non-striated. It lacks that visible, highly organized banding pattern you see under the microscope.
Oh, okay.
And like cardiac muscle, it's entirely involuntary. You'll find smooth muscle forming the walls of most hollow organs. Think the digestive tract, the urinary system, and really critically, the large and small blood vessels.
And the lack of striation. That doesn't mean it's less important, right? Just that its function is different.
Exactly. Smooth muscle provides more continuous, lower intensity force over long periods. It's necessary for essential maintenance. Think about how it regulates digestion, pushing food along,
Right.
or how it constantly adjusts the diameter of your blood vessels to fine-tune your blood pressure and blood flow.
So it's always working quietly in the background.
Constantly. If we sort of synthesize the three roles, skeletal muscle is for speed and power, those acute interactions. Cardiac muscle is the ultimate endurance machine, the relentless pump. And smooth muscle provides that constant regulatory control, ensuring homeostasis, facilitating internal transport. It's the quiet manager.
That structural and control differentiation really sets the stage perfectly for our next topic.
Yeah.
Because while movement is the obvious function, muscles play, what, 4 core, maybe less obvious roles. We can use that MPHZ framework to talk about them.
Right. The M, as we've pretty much established, is movement. This covers everything from gross motor skills like walking to really fine motor skills like threading a needle.
Got it. But the P for posture and stability, that's where the truly tireless subconscious work happens, isn't it?
Absolutely. When you're just sitting or standing, your muscles aren't off. Not at all. They're constantly generating small, sustained forces to counteract gravity and any internal shifts or perturbations.
So if those stabilizing muscles, especially in the core and neck, just decided to switch off.
You'd immediately collapse.
Yeah.
They provide the underlying stability for everything else.
And that constant underlying metabolic activity brings us neatly to H, heat production.
Right. Muscle contraction is, biochemically speaking, an inefficient process, which means a significant amount of the energy used is actually released as heat.
And that's useful.
It's vital for maintaining our core body temperature. Think about it. When environmental temperatures drop too low, what does your body do?
You shiver.
Exactly. The central nervous system rapidly initiates shivering, which is just an involuntary rapid cycling of muscle contractions designed almost purely as a thermal generator to warm you up.
Huh. It's fascinating that the body uses inefficient movement, essentially, to solve a survival problem, like a built-in heater.
It's quite elegant in a way.
Yeah.
And finally, the C stands for circulation and digestion. We already touched on the role of smooth muscle in the walls of blood vessels. For circulation, that process called vasoconstriction and vasodilation, controlling blood flow. And for digestion, those rhythmic, wave-like contractions of smooth muscle called peristalsis, they're entirely responsible for moving food through your digestive tract.
So without muscle action there, everything just stops.
The internal transport systems simply fail.
Yeah. Okay. So we know the types: skeletal, cardiac, smooth, and their big functions: movement, posture, heat, circulation. Now, let's get into the real deep dive, the microscopic physics that define how muscles actually do their work. We're entering the engine room now to understand the sliding filament theory, often called SFT.
Right, SFT is really the foundational concept in muscle physiology. To get it, we first need to recognize the basic functional unit of striated muscle, so skeletal and cardiac muscle. That unit is the sarcomere.
The sarcomere. Okay.
Think of the sarcomere as like the microscopic engine cylinder. They're arranged end to end, millions of them, and that's what gives skeletal and cardiac muscle that striped or striated appearance we talked about.
Okay, so if it's an engine cylinder, what are its physical boundaries?
The sarcomere is defined by structures called Z-discs at each end. They form the borders. And within these boundaries, we find the two key protein filaments. The thicker filament, called myosin, which is equipped with these specialized heads, and the thinner filament, called actin.
Myosin, actin, got it.
And contraction happens when these filaments literally slide past each other, which shortens the whole sarcomere structure. And when millions of sarcomeres shorten together, the entire muscle contracts.
So how does this sliding, this pulling mechanism actually get started? It must be really tightly regulated, otherwise our muscles would just be permanently cramped up.
Right. Absolutely. The key regulator is calcium ions. In a relaxed muscle, the binding sites on the actin filament, the spots where the myosin heads want to attach, are blocked. They're covered up by two regulatory proteins, troponin and tropomyosin.
Okay, so troponin and tropomyosin are like the gatekeepers.
Precisely. They keep actin and myosin apart when the muscle should be relaxed. Now, when a nerve impulse arrives at the muscle cell, it triggers the release of calcium ions from storage within the cell.
Where are they stored?
Inside a network called the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So calcium floods out. These calcium ions then bind to that troponin protein.
The gatekeeper.
Right. Binding calcium causes troponin to change its shape, and this shape change physically pulls the other regulatory protein, tropomyosin, away from the binding sites on the actin filament. Suddenly, those sites are exposed.
Okay, so the gates are now open, the binding sites are available. What happens next? How does the myosin head actually initiate the pull?
As soon as those sites are exposed, the myosin head immediately binds to the actin site. This connection is known as cross-bridge formation.
A bridge between the filaments.
Exactly. Then the myosin head performs what's called the power stroke. It pivots powerfully like a tiny oar, and this pivot physically drags the actin filament toward the center of the sarcomere. And since actin is anchored to the Z discs at the ends, this pulls the Z discs closer together, shortening the sarcomere. The muscle contracts.
And this movement, this pivoting action, must require a lot of energy.
Oh, absolutely. Immense energy at the molecular level. This energy is provided by ATP adenosine triphosphate, the cell's energy currency.
Right. So where does ATP come in?
ATP is crucial for two essential steps in this cycle. First, it energizes the myosin head, resetting it into its high-energy cocked position, ready to bind to actin and pull again.
Okay.
Second, and this is maybe even more important to understand, ATP is required for the myosin head to detach from the actin filament after the power stroke is done.
Ah, so it takes energy to let go.
Yes. Without a new molecule of ATP binding to the myosin head, it cannot release the actin. It stays stuck in that contracted state. This is actually why rigor mortis happens after death. ATP production stops, myosin heads can't detach, and muscles become rigid.
Wow, that connection between energy and detachment is... Yeah, that's a real aha moment. So it's not just one pull, it's a continuous cycle.
It's a continuous cyclical process. Attach, cross bridge, pull, power stroke, detach requires ATP, reset requires ATP, all orchestrated by the presence or absence of calcium and fueled by ATP. And this cycle repeats thousands of times per second across millions of sarcomeres in a contracting muscle.
It's just microscopic mechanical genius, really. And that underlies every single movement we make.
Every single one.
Okay, so moving from the molecular level back up to the macroscopic, let's analyze the types of force generation. When we talk about how muscles generate force relative to changes in their length, we're classifying different types of contractions, right? This seems really essential for understanding things like physical training and rehab.
Definitely. We generally define muscle action into two broad categories, isotonic and isometric.
Okay, isotonic. I think iso means same, tonic means tension, so same tension. But practically, it means the muscle actually changes its overall length while dealing with a relatively constant load, right?
That's a good way to put it. And isotonic contractions themselves are broken down into two phases. First, you have the concentric contraction. This happens when the muscle shortens as it generates force.
Like the upward phase of a bicep curl, lifting the dumbbell.
Exactly. Your biceps muscle shortens to overcome the weight of the dumbbell. That's concentric.
And the counterpoint to that is the eccentric contraction.
Right. Eccentric action occurs when the muscle actually lengthens while it's still under tension and generating force. So using your example, it's when you are slowly lowering that same dumbbell back down. Your biceps is still active, controlling the descent, but it's lengthening.
Okay. And eccentric movements they feel different, sometimes harder.
They are fascinating physiologically. They actually generate higher forces with less energy consumption compared to concentric movements, but they are also where most exercise-induced muscle damage tends to occur.
Ah, the good kind of damage, hopefully. The kind that leads to getting stronger, hypertrophy, but also the damage responsible for that awful delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS.
Exactly. That damage is microscopic. During that eccentric lengthening, the sarcomeres are essentially being pulled apart while the myosin heads are still trying to hold on, creating that tension.
So it's a microscopic tug-of-war under strain.
Pretty much. This mechanical strain causes micro tears in the muscle fibers themselves and also in the surrounding connective tissue. This then triggers an inflammatory response, followed by a repair and rebuilding process. It's controlled breakdown for a future, stronger rebuild.
That's a key distinction for you listening. The damage isn't just incidental, it's an inherent part of how muscles resist force during lengthening, and it's part of the adaptation process.
Definitely. Now compare all the changing length of isotonic contractions to the second major category, isometric contractions.
Isometric, okay. ISO, again, means same, and metric means length, so same length, like I'm still... The muscle length stays the same.
Perfect. In an isometric contraction, the muscle is activated, it's generating tension, but the external resistance is either too great or it's immovable so the muscle doesn't actually shorten or lengthen.
Like pushing against a solid wall.
Exactly. Or holding a static plank position. You are definitely recruiting motor units, your muscles are firing, you're building force, but there's no change in the joint angle or the overall length of the muscle itself.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, to really round out this understanding of force, we need to zoom back out a bit to the organizational level and talk about motor unit recruitment. This sounds like how the body decides how strong any given contraction needs to be.
It is exactly that. Every muscle is made up of many individual muscle fibers, right? And these fibers are organized into functional groups called motor units.
What defines a motor unit?
A motor unit is simply a single motor neuron, a nerve cell coming from the spinal cord or brainstem, and all the muscle fibers that particular neuron innervates or connects to.
Okay.
And the key physiological rule here is the all or none principle at the fiber level. When that motor neuron fires an electrical signal, all the muscle fibers within its unit contract fully, completely. There's no such thing as a partial firing of a single muscle fiber. It's either on or it's off.
Okay, wait. If a single fiber can only fire completely or not at all, how do we grade force? How do we manage to lift, say, a delicate feather really softly versus lifting a 100-pound box with maximum effort? It can't be all or nothing for the whole muscle.
Right, good question. We modulate the force of the whole muscle in two primary ways. First, by increasing the frequency of nerve stimulation to the motor units that are already active. Firing them more rapidly makes the force summate, leading to a stronger, smoother contraction.
Okay, firing rate. What's the second way?
The second way is by recruiting more motor units. For lifting that feather, your brain recruits only a few, probably small motor units. For lifting the heavy box, your brain increases the firing frequency, and it recruits many, many more motor units, including the larger, more powerful ones. It's like calling in reinforcements.
So size and number of units plus firing frequency. That makes sense. And this leads us right into the concept of muscle fiber types, doesn't it? Because not all motor units, not all fibers are the same. We hear about fast twitch and slow twitch fibers all the time.
This is absolutely fundamental to performance and function. We generally classify muscle fibers based on two main characteristics: their speed of contraction and their primary metabolic pathway for generating ATP.
Okay.
So type I fibers are also known as slow twitch or slow oxidative fibers. They contract relatively slowly, but they are highly resistant to fatigue.
Why are they fatigue resistant?
Because they rely primarily on aerobic metabolism, using oxygen to generate large amounts of ATP efficiently over long periods. They are packed with mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, and myoglobin, which stores oxygen, giving them a characteristic red appearance.
So these would dominate in muscles needed for posture or in endurance athletes.
Exactly. They are the marathon runners of the muscular system.
Okay, so what about the fast ones?
Conversely, type 2 fibers are the fast twitch fibers, built more for speed and power. But there's a bit of a spectrum here, too.
Ah, it's not just one type.
No. We have type Ti fibers, also called fast oxidative glycolytic fibers. They're kind of intermediate. They contract faster than type I, but they also have decent aerobic capacity, so they're moderately fatigue resistant. They can use both aerobic and anaerobic pathways. Think of them as adaptable middle distance runners.
Okay, adaptable.
And the other fast type. Then you have type I's fibers, sometimes called IBE in other animals, but iose is more accurate for humans. These are the fast glycolytic fibers. They contract extremely rapidly and generate tremendous force, but they rely almost entirely on anaerobic glycolysis for ATP.
Which means?
Which means they fatigue very quickly because anaerobic pathways produce ATP much faster, but are far less sustainable, and produce metabolic byproducts like lactic acid faster. These are the sprinters, the powerlifters, providing maximal bursts of force for short durations.
So the type of activity you excel at, say, endurance running versus weightlifting, is largely influenced by the natural ratio of these fiber types you have in your muscles. Though training can change things a bit.
Yes, genetics plays a big role in the baseline ratio, but training can absolutely lead to significant hypertrophy growth in size of specific fiber types, and even some, though limited, conversion between the subtypes, particularly between I's and II. The balance is really essential context for any discussion of movement mechanics or training adaptation.
Absolutely fascinating. Okay, now that we have the mechanics, the contraction types, the motor units, and the fiber types down, we need the universal language, the vocabulary, to describe where and how movement is happening in the body. Let's dive into what we might call anatomy charades, the essential movement terminology.
Sounds good. This vocabulary provides a really clear, standardized way to communicate about motion, avoiding confusion. We should start with the most familiar pair, flexion and extension.
Right. Flexion is basically bending a joint, which decreases the angle between the two bones forming that joint. Extension is the opposite, straightening the joint, increasing the angle. Like bending your elbow for a bicep flex is flexion, and straightening it is extension. Same for the knee.
Perfect. Next, we define movement relative to the body's central midline, abduction and adduction.
Abduction. That's
Yeah.
movement away from the midline, right?
Yeah.
Like if you lift your arm straight out to the side, you're abducting it. The memory trick, alien abduction, still works for me. You're being taken away from your center.
It's a classic for a reason. Yeah. And adduction is simply the reverse movement toward the midline. So bringing your arm back down to your side or bringing your legs together after doing a jumping jack. That's adduction, adding it back to the body.
Okay. Rotation seems fairly straightforward, but it can happen around different axes, can it?
Yes. Rotation is simply a turning movement of a structure around its long axis. This could be a medial rotation, which is turning towards the midline of the body, or lateral rotation, turning away from the midline. Think about twisting your torso side to side or just rotating your head to say no.
Got it. Then we have specific terms for the forearm and hand, supination and pronation. These always trip people up.
They can. Supination is the movement that turns the forearm so the palm faces forward or upward. The classic mnemonic is you can hold a bowl of soup in your supinated palm.
Hold the soup, okay?
And pronation is the opposite movement, turning the forearm so the palm faces backward or downward. Like when you're typing on a keyboard, your hands are typically pronated.
Makes sense. And finally, a pair of movements that primarily relate to the shoulder girdle or the jaw. Elevation and depression.
Right. Elevation is moving a body part superiorly or upwards. The classic example is shrugging your shoulders up towards your ears. Depression is moving that part inferiorly or downwards, bringing your shoulders back down to their normal resting position. This precise terminology just removes any ambiguity when we're describing complex physical actions or exercises.
Definitely needed. Okay, so with that vocabulary established, let's tackle the last piece of the language puzzle. Decoding muscle names. For so many people, myself included sometimes, these names just seem like intimidating Latin or Greek jumbles. But you're saying they're actually precise, self-contained descriptions.
They truly are, for the most part. The complex names usually follow a highly logical framework. We can summarize it with the mnemonic LSSFNA. Each letter tells us something specific about that muscle's identity, its structure, or its job.
LSSFNA. Okay, let's break it down. L is for location.
Location is often the first clue embedded in the name. Terms like brachii, as we've mentioned, means of the arm, indicating its presence in the upper limb. Femoris places it in the thigh, relating to the femur. If a muscle is named the tibialis anterior, you immediately know two things. It's associated with the tibia, the shin bone, and it's situated towards the front anterior.
Okay, location. Next, S is for shape.
Shape is often geometric. The deltoid muscle, the big one covering the shoulder joint, is named after the Greek letter delta, because of its triangular shape. The trapezius muscle, covering the upper back and neck, is named for its trapezoidal form. Sometimes it's less geometric, like serratus meaning saw-toothed.
Okay. The second S in LS, SFNA, stands for size.
Size is usually relative, comparing a muscle to others in its immediate vicinity or group. You see terms like maximus for the biggest, minimus for the smallest, medius for intermediates, or longus for long and brevis for short. For instance, the gluteus maximus clearly tells you which of the gluteal muscles is the largest one.
Makes sense. F is for fiber direction. Why is that important?
The direction of the muscle fibers is critical for predicting its function, its line of pull. Rectus means the fibers run straight, usually parallel to the midline of the body, like the rectus abdominis, the six-pack muscle. Transversus means fibers run horizontally across the body, and oblique indicates the fibers run at an angle, suggesting the muscle is involved in rotation or maybe lateral bending.
Okay, that's really useful. N is the number of origins. What's an origin?
The origin is generally considered the more fixed or proximal point of attachment for a muscle. This part of the name tells us how many distinct tendons or heads the muscle has at its origin. So the biceps brachii has 2 heads, bi means 2. The triceps brachii has 3 heads, tri means 3. The quadriceps femoris group in the thigh has 4 separate heads, quad means 4, that all converge into a single tendon.
Got it. And finally, A is for action.
The action, or the primary function the muscle performs, is often integrated right into the name. A flexor muscle causes flexion. An extensor causes extension. An adductor muscle causes adduction, pulling towards the midline. So if you see a muscle called the flexor carpi radialis, It flexes flexor of the wrist, carpi, and is on the thumb side, radialis. The LSSFNA framework really transforms what looks like random jargon into a systematic descriptive label.
That is incredibly helpful. It's like learning a code. Now that we have that decoding framework, let's make this really practical. Let's embark on our grand tour of the body's major muscle groups. This is where we can really apply that LSSFNA logic and talk about function beyond just the simple action listed in the name.
Sounds good. Let's start at the top with the head and neck. Here we find smaller but highly specialized muscles. We definitely have to discuss the sternocleidomastoid. That name seems almost designed to confuse people, but it perfectly follows the code we just talked about.
Okay, challenge accepted. Let's break down sternocleidomastoid using LSFNA right now.
All right. Sterno refers to the sternum, or breastbone. Cleido refers to the clavicle, the collarbone. And mastoid refers to the mastoid process, which is a bony bump on the temporal bone of the skull just behind your ear.
So it's named entirely based on its attachments, its location and number of origins. Two heads, one from sternum, one from clavicle, inserting on the mastoid.
Exactly. Its action is primarily to turn the head to the opposite side and also to flex the neck, bringing your chin towards your chest. When both sides contract together, they flex the neck strongly.
That immediately shows the value of knowing the naming convention. Okay, what else in the head neck? We also have the primary chewing muscles, right? The masseter and temporalis.
Yes, these are absolutely essential for survival, for mastication. The masseter, in particular, running from your cheekbone down to your lower jaw, is often cited as the strongest muscle in the body relative to its size. It provides that immense force required for closing the jaw. The temporalis is the fan-shaped muscle on the side of your head.
Okay, moving down now into the upper body, kind of the powerhouse for pushing, pulling, and a lot of fine motor control with the hands, though we're focusing on the bigger movers. Let's start with the chest and shoulder area.
Right. The pectoralis major is the large, fan-shaped chest muscle. Its primary actions are adduction, bringing the arm across the body, and medial rotation of the arm, turning it inwards. It's the main muscle used in horizontal pushing motions, like a push-up or bench press.
And covering the shoulder joint itself.
That's the deltoid. We remember its triangular shape deltoid. It has three distinct parts, or heads anterior, middle, and posterior, each contributing slightly differently. But its primary overall function is the abduction of the arm, lifting it straight out away from your side, like flapping a wing.
Makes sense. And for the arms themselves, we have that classic antagonistic pair, the biceps brachii and the triceps brachii.
Yes. The biceps brachii, we already decoded that name. Two heads located in the arm brachii, is the primary flexor of the forearm at the elbow joint. It also helps with supination, turning the palm up.
The muscle you flex to make a muscle.
That's the one. Its antagonist, on the back of the arm, is the triceps brachii, with its three heads. It's the primary extensor of the forearm, responsible for straightening the elbow joint. They work in perfect opposition to allow controlled movement.
Okay. Now turning to the back, there are two really large, powerful muscles that drive pulling motions. The latissimus dorsi and the trapezius.
The latissimus dorsi, often just called the lats, is a very wide, sheet-like muscle covering a large part of the lower and mid-back. Its name means broadest muscle of the back. It drives powerful extension, pulling the arm down and back, adduction, pulling the arm towards the body, and medial rotation of the arm. These are the crucial actions involved in things like pull-ups, swimming, or rowing.
Big pulling muscle. And the trapezius. It seems to cover a lot of area, too.
It does. The trapezius, named for its trapezoid shape, spans the neck, shoulders, and upper back. It's complex, often divided into upper, middle, and lower fibers. It's responsible for stabilizing the shoulder blade, scapula, as well as elevation, shrugging your shoulders up, that's the upper traps, retraction, pulling the shoulder blades together, middle traps, and depression, pulling them down, lower traps.
Well, lots going on there. Okay, this brings us down to the trunk, or the core, which, as the sources emphasize, is far more than just the surface muscles we see. We're talking about true core stability here.
Absolutely. The surface muscle most people identify with the core is the rectus abdominis. That's the six-pack muscle. Rectus tells us the fibers run straight vertically. Its main function is to flex the vertebral column, like when you do a crunch, bringing your rib cage closer to your pelvis.
But that's just the front layer, right? What about the sides?
Right. Surrounding that, wrapping around the sides, are the obliques, the external and internal obliques. Their name tells you the fiber direction is oblique or angled.
And that angle direction hints at their function.
Exactly. It signals their primary role in twisting the trunk, rotation, and also in side bending, lateral flexion. They're essential rotational stabilizers for the spine. But functionally, perhaps the most important core muscle is the deepest layer, the transversus abdominis.
Ah, the internal corset muscle. What makes this one so crucial for stability? Why is it different?
The transversus abdominis, as its name suggests, transverse is always crosswise, has fibers that run horizontally, wrapping around the abdomen like a corset or weightlifting belt. Its primary action isn't really to move the trunk, but to compress the abdominal contents.
And why is compression important?
Because compressing the abdomen significantly increases what's called intra-abdominal pressure, IAP. This IAP acts like a pressurized cylinder or an internal airbag that stabilizes the lumbar spine from the inside out. It helps protect the spine from excessive loads during lifting or powerful movements and provides a stable base for your limbs to work from. Training this deep muscle properly is absolutely key to preventing lower back injury and improving overall functional strength.
That's a really important point. It's not just about the visible muscles. Okay, finally, let's explore the lower body, the powerful architecture responsible for locomotion, standing, bearing our weight.
Starting at the rear, we have the gluteal group, dominated by the gluteus maximus. The maximus size designation tells you it's the largest of the three gluteal muscles. It forms the bulk of the buttock.
And its main job.
It is the most powerful extensor of the hip joint. It's essential for forceful movements like climbing stairs, standing up from a seated position, running, and jumping, basically, driving your body forward and upward.
But the sources also mention the gluteus medius and minimus. They're smaller, but maybe more critical for stability during walking.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. While the maximus is the prime mover for hip extension, the gluteus medius and minimus, located more on the side of the hip, act as key stabilizers, particularly of the pelvis. Their main job during walking or running is to prevent the opposite side of the pelvis from dropping down when you lift that foot off the ground. Weakness here leads to a common gait dysfunction called the Trendelenburg gait.
So, important for smooth walking. Okay, moving around to the front of the thigh, we encounter the massive four-headed quadriceps group, the quads.
Right, quad means four, saspix means head. The quads, rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, are the powerful extensors of the knee joint. They straighten your leg, they're highly active during running, jumping, kicking motions, and controlling descent, like when walking downhill or downstairs.
And their opposing group on the back of the thigh.
That would be the hamstrings. This group consists of three muscles: biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus. Their primary actions are to flex the knee, bend it, and also to extend the hip, pull a leg backward.
So they work in opposition to the quads.
Directly. A functional balance in terms of both strength and flexibility between these two powerful groups, quads and hamstrings, is vital for knee health and athletic performance. A very frequent site of muscle strain, especially in athletes, is the hamstring group, often related to imbalances or forceful contractions during that antagonistic relationship with the quads.
Makes sense. Okay, moving down below the knee to the calf region. We have the two main muscles there responsible for pushing off the ground, the gastrocnemius and soleus.
Right, collectively often just called the calf muscle. Both of these muscles insert via the Achilles tendon onto the heel bone, and their primary action is plantar flexing the foot, which means pointing the toes downwards, like when you stand on your tiptoes or push off during the propulsive phase of walking and running.
Is there a functional difference between them?
Yes, the gastrocnemius is the more superficial two-headed muscle you can easily see. It actually crosses the knee joint as well as the ankle, so it also assists slightly with knee flexion and is most effective at plantar flexion when the knee is straight. The soleus lies deeper underneath the gastrocnemius. It doesn't cross the knee. It's considered more of a postural, slow-twitch workhorse, essential for standing upright for long periods and providing sustained force during walking.
Interesting distinction. And their antagonist, the muscle on the front of the shin.
That's the tibialis anterior. Tibialis tells you it's by the tibia, anterior tells you it's on the front. Its main action is the opposite of plantar flexion. It performs dorsiflexion, pulling the foot and toes upwards towards the shin.
Why do we need that?
This action is crucial during walking to lift your toes clear of the ground during the swing phase, preventing tripping, and also to control the lowering of the foot back to the ground after your heel strikes. Weakness here can cause foot drop.
Okay, that completes our detailed tour. It really shows the interconnectedness, the logic, and the sheer complexity of the muscular system. But as robust as these engines are, they are definitely vulnerable. We really have to dedicate some time now to the clinical connections, what happens when the mechanics go wrong.
Absolutely. The muscular system, including the tendons that connect muscles to bones, is constantly under stress from daily activities, exercise, and sometimes trauma, making injury unfortunately quite common. The simplest and probably most frequent injury is the strain or tear, often just colloquially called a pulled muscle.
Okay, so what's the actual difference between a strain and a tear on a microscopic level? Is it just severity?
Essentially, yes. A strain is technically a tear in the muscle fibers themselves or in the tendon attaching the muscle to bone. We grade them based on severity. A grade I strain is a mild pull, involving micro tears in only a small number of fibers. You get some pain but retain most function. A grade 2 strain is a more significant partial tear with more pain, swelling, and loss of strength. And a grade 3 strain is a complete rupture or tear of the muscle belly or the tendon right through. That usually requires surgical repair.
And what causes them typically?
They often result from sudden, explosive concentric effort, like sprinting off the blocks, or sometimes from overstretching. But as we discussed earlier with eccentric contractions, they can also happen frequently during uncontrolled or excessive eccentric loading, where the muscle is trying to resist lengthening under a heavy load.
Okay. Related to muscle and tendon injury, we also have tendinitis. What exactly is that?
Tendinitis is technically the acute inflammation, tendinitis means inflammation, of a tendon, that dense, fibrous connective tissue that bridges muscle to bone. It typically results from repetitive microtrauma, basically chronic overuse or overload without sufficient recovery time. Think of tennis elbow or jumper's knee.
And why can tendinitis be such a nagging, persistent problem?
What makes tendinitis, or more accurately often tendinopathy, which implies degeneration alongside inflammation, particularly challenging, is that tendons inherently have a very poor blood supply compared to muscle tissue. Muscles are rich in blood vessels, tendons aren't nearly as much. This poor vascularity means they heal much more slowly and can easily become a chronic, grumbling problem if not managed properly with rest, appropriate loading, and addressing the underlying cause of the overuse.
Right, the slow healing makes sense. Okay, moving into more serious systemic pathologies now, let's discuss muscular dystrophy, or MD. That sounds quite different.
It is very different. MD isn't an injury. It refers to a group of inherited genetic disorders. There are many types, but the core problem usually revolves around defects in the genes that code for proteins essential for normal muscle cell structure and function. The most well-known is Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which involves defects in the protein dystrophin.
Dystrophin, what does that protein normally do?
Dystrophin acts like a crucial shock absorber and anchor. It links the muscle fiber's internal contractile apparatus, the actin and myosin, to the external membrane and the surrounding connective tissue matrix. When dystrophin is defective or absent, the muscle fibers become fragile. The constant stress of normal muscle contraction causes damage, leading to progressive muscle fiber weakening, degeneration, and eventual death. The lost muscle tissue is often replaced by fat and fibrous connective tissue, leading to increasing weakness and disability over time.
Wow, that really demonstrates how critical the integrity of just one cellular protein can be for the function of the entire macroscopic muscle system. And finally, let's touch on a dangerous acute condition that often results from significant trauma: compartment syndrome.
Yes, compartment syndrome is a true surgical emergency. It involves a rapid and dangerous increase in pressure within a fascial compartment. Our limbs, particularly the forearm and lower leg, have muscles, nerves, and blood vessels grouped together in compartments, each wrapped by a thick, tough layer of connective tissue called fascia.
Okay, like a tight sleeve around the muscle group.
Exactly. And the crucial problem is that this fascia is very strong, but it does not stretch easily. So if there's significant swelling, perhaps due to a fracture, a severe muscle contusion, bruise, or internal bleeding within that compartment, the swelling has nowhere to go.
The pressure just builds up inside that tight fascial sleeve.
Precisely. As the pressure builds rapidly inside the compartment, it starts to compress everything within it, including the blood vessels and nerves. This compression can cut off blood flow, a condition called ischemia, to the muscle tissue within the compartment.
And that's bad.
That's extremely bad. If blood flow is cut off for too long, the muscle tissue begins to die, necrosis, and the nerves can suffer permanent damage. The only effective treatment is immediate surgery to cut the fascia open, a procedure called a fasciotomy, to relieve the intense pressure and restore circulation before irreversible damage occurs. It's time critical.
That detail about the non-stretching fascia really highlights why it becomes an emergency so quickly. Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground. The fundamentals of muscle types and functions, the sophisticated molecular mechanism of contraction, the surprisingly logical naming convention toward the major muscle groups, and now touched on some critical clinical concerns.
We really have established a comprehensive understanding, hopefully synthesizing these different areas for you. We started with the core functions: movement, posture, heat production, circulation, and differentiated the three main tissue types: the voluntary skeletal muscle, the involuntary cardiac muscle in the heart, and the involuntary smooth muscle lining organs and vessels.
And we performed a true deep dive into that microscopic world, understanding that all muscle force ultimately comes from that precise calcium-regulated ATP-fueled sliding of actin and myosin filaments within the sarcomere. We also learned how force is graded through motor unit recruitment and how muscle performance is dictated by the metabolic capacity of those different fiber types: the slow-twitch endurance fibers and the fast-twitch power fibers.
We decoded the language of movement itself: flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, and so on. And maybe most practically, we cracked the code of muscle nomenclature using that LS-SFNA framework, showing that those long names are actually descriptive maps telling you about location, shape, size, fiber direction, origins, and action. And we toured the body, highlighting key muscles, but also emphasizing important functional concepts like the stabilizer role of the deep core muscles and the importance of balance between antagonistic pairs like the biceps and triceps or quads and hamstrings.
And importantly, we highlighted that even these incredibly robust and adaptable muscle systems are susceptible to injury, ranging from common strains and tendinitis to more severe genetic conditions like muscular dystrophy and acute emergencies like compartment syndrome, just reminding us of the potential fragility underlying the system's strength.
The sheer complexity we've uncovered today really showcases that movement isn't just an accident. It's this meticulously managed process involving intricate chemical reactions, precise electrical signals, and powerful mechanical force generation, all coordinated seamlessly. Every single action you take, from breathing right now to maybe getting up after listening, requires this intricate, tireless machinery operating constantly.
So I think the ultimate takeaway here is this. The muscular system represents this perfect, beautiful fusion of chemistry, physics, and biological engineering. It's a system you operate every single second of every day, yet it's one, perhaps, you often take for granted. So maybe next time you stand up from your chair or climb a set of stairs or even just hold a conversation which uses tiny muscles in your face and throat, pause for just a second and reflect on the millions upon millions of those molecular tug-of-wars happening inside your muscle fibers, all precisely orchestrated by calcium ions and fueled by ATP splitting. Understanding even a fraction of this internal mechanics hopefully gives you a greater appreciation, maybe even a bit more agency over your physical self.
That's a powerful thought to end on. Keep moving, and maybe keep thinking a little more about how you move.
That's all for today's deep dive. Thank you for joining us.